Suffolk Pod Show was produced and managed by podtalk.co.uk.
Episode 8, talking to Owen Calvert-Lyons, Artistic Director of the Theatre Royal Bury St Edmunds. Owen is internationally renowned as a visionary producer and director. He has an extraordinary talent for uniting theatre companies with communities and taking theatre into new dimensions by pushing boundaries on the traditional. Here to tell us more about his work and plans for the Theatre Royal, we welcome Owen. Hello, Owen.
Hello, Zana.
Hi, it's a real pleasure to have you here today, and particularly after the good news you received on Monday.
Yes, it's lovely to be here, and especially with that background of great news with Cultural Recovery Fund.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I've noticed that quite a few theatres in and around Suffolk have received funding too. It just means so much for all of us.
It does, and it is important that theatre is part of an ecology. So actually, our success is only feels like success if other theatres around us are successful too. So yeah, great news that so many other Suffolk theatres did so well.
Yeah, and you're new to Suffolk.
I am, yes.
Tell us where have you come from?
Well, I'm originally from Birmingham. So I grew up there. My family didn't work in theatre, but they often took me to the theatre. So I was lucky enough to go to places like the Hippodrome and the Midlands Arts Centre and the Old Rep. And so I think my passion for theatre was ignited in my childhood in Birmingham.
What inspired you to actually move into working within the realms of theatre?
Well, I think in my early days, in my childhood, I always, like with lots of young people who are interested in theatre, I thought what I was really passionate about was acting. And I was part of a youth theatre and I took part in productions at school. When I was 17, we used to have these great big shows at our comprehensive school, great big musicals every summer. And when we turned 17, so we were just starting our A-levels, the teacher who had directed these for about 20 years decided he wanted to take a year off. And he nominated me and my friend Ian, who is now a television writer, to direct it in his place. And so we directed a school production of Little Shop of Horrors at 17, which was just such an extraordinary experience of suddenly having this enormous cast of 100 other young people and having teachers working alongside us as our peers, so a teacher as a musical director and a teacher as a costume supervisor. And so that was after my first taste of directing, and I absolutely loved it. We had such a ball making that show that suddenly my eyes were open to that, and I changed tack at 18. And while I was doing my A-levels, I suddenly said, actually, I don't want to act. I want to be a theatre director. And so when I went to university, I looked for a course that would allow me to specialise in theatre direction. So I went to Bristol at 19 to go and explore theatre direction.
Wow. I mean, what a responsibility, and thank you to the drama teacher who obviously took a year out to give you such an insight.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that was such a gift, that opportunity. And I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for that moment. I've been lucky enough to have a few of those moments across my life. So while at university, we would often bring in external theatre practitioners to come and run workshops with us. And one time we had this guy called Rod Dixon come in, who is now the artistic director of Red Ladder Theatre. But he came in, did this brilliant workshop with us. And at the end of it, he said, look, this is a really hard industry to get into. So when you graduate, you should just pick up the phone to anybody and everybody you've ever met in theatre and just say, give me a job. So, true to his word, as soon as I graduated, I called him and said, look, you said I should call people up and say, give me a job, so give me a job. And he said, oh, all right, I better put my money where my mouth is. And so he did. He gave me a job, which was my first break, which was to go down to Plymouth to this beautiful theatre, which is the Barbican Theatre in Plymouth, which is a tiny little theatre, very much rooted in its community. And assistant direct him on a community pantomime with a cast of 100, including a dame who at the time was an asylum seeker from Iraq, and he had been part of he talked often about how difficult it had been being an actor under Saddam Hussein's regime. So we just had this extraordinary time working in Plymouth, making my first show with Rod.
A cast of 100 is no mean feat.
It isn't, no, although I seem to have done that quite a few times now, so it doesn't faze me quite so much as it did back then.
What was the pantomime?
Gosh, you know what? I think it was Aladdin. Struggling to reach my memory back that far. I think it was Aladdin.
After working there in Plymouth at the Barbican, you moved on, I presume.
I did, and again, I've been very lucky to work all across the country in all sorts of different theatres. So, from the Barbican Theatre in Plymouth, I then went to Theatre Royal Plymouth, and from there went on to the Courtyard in Herefordshire, and from there to York Theatre Royal, and from there to Arcola Theatre in the East End of London, then on to the Point and the Bury in Eastleigh in Hampshire, then back to London for Oval House, and then from there to Theatre Royal Bury St Edmunds.
So here,
So quite a number of theatres and 3 Theatre Royals amongst that journey.
Quite special in many ways, and it's nice that you're now still at a Theatre Royal, and such a special one. Bury is such a wonderful theatre.
It really is. I mean, it is unique, the only working Regency theatre in England. And it's sort of unique in so many ways. In its design, it's unique. It's such a beautiful, unusual space. But also, I think, in its position within its community. I mean, the thing that's been so impressed on me in my time here, even under these strange circumstances, is just how passionate the community is for its venue. And that isn't the case in every theatre. And it takes so much work to achieve that. And clearly that work has been done over the years because everybody feels that they own it, which is quite right.
We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on, but I just want to reflect on a couple of productions that you've done. One I particularly want to highlight on is The Demolition Party, which was...
Yes.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Okay. So, I mean, that is a really unique moment in my career, and I think a unique moment in theatre history, really, that I had been at Oval House for a few years at that point, and the plan, even from when I arrived, because I was there for 4 years in total, from when I arrived was that this theatre was going to close and be relocated to a new site. And so the timing of that kept shifting, but we always knew that was on the horizon. And so I had quite a lot of time to think about what that meant. And it's a really rare opportunity to close a theatre and have a building that was no longer going to be used. And the new building was going to be built on a completely different site. So we had this opportunity to do whatever we wanted with that building that would never be used as a theatre again. And at first we had all sorts of ideas, as you might, about the sort of greatest hits, how you look backwards over the back catalogue of a theatre that had been going for 55 years. It's an extraordinary theatre. I mean, the history of that it was part of a founding member of the London Pride Festival. It had been the first meeting point of the Black Panthers in the UK. So it was steeped in theatre and cultural history. And it's felt to me that actually to do anything that looked backwards would actually be a sort of betrayal of that history. It had always been a radical and experimental theatre. And my feeling was that it should continue to be radical and experimental right up to its very last moment. So as we started looking at that, about what that might mean, and also that sense of we were going to physically knock down a building and what that means, I came up with the idea of the Demolition Party, which was to pair up artists with structural engineers and allow them to destroy a different aspect of the theatre through performance. So artists had to come and pitch ideas for a production that they would make that would involve large-scale destruction. And so we did things like We Dig, which was a production where we dug 2 meters through the center of the main house stage, below the level of the foundations of the building. We had to bring in structural engineers, we had to bring in demolition experts, we had to dig this enormous hole that would then not damage the overall structure of the building so that audiences could still safely go in there. So every night we would start the production by a group of artists smashing through the dressing room walls with a sledgehammer and entering into the auditorium through the entrance they'd just created, which was just extraordinary.
It really is extraordinary. And I'm imagining you must have needed machinery as well to dig that deep.
Yeah, I mean, we developed a partnership with 2 companies, one structural engineering company and the other a construction firm. And so with each show, we would assess what we would need, and then they would send down a team of builders and they would work with us to sort of dig this, because a lot of it was stuff that we couldn't possibly do ourselves. So digging that hole in the center of the stage took about 4 guys about 4 days to dig that hole. It was absolutely enormous. And then what we could do each night was we would have great moments where Emma Franklin, the lead artist, and her team would have Kango hammers and would be drilling sections. But really, you could only you would only make a small dent in the time that the duration of a show.
I was going to say, and the noise might, put a few off.
Yes, yeah. And there was other great moments. I mean, the final act of the demolition party was the Orchestra of Destruction, where we rigged the interior of the theatre with explosives. And we worked with an artist called Aoife van Lindenthal, who is, believe it or not, an explosion artist. I mean, that's a sort of dream job to aspire to. And she worked with a composer, and he composed a piece where that was all composed from the latent frequencies inside the building. And then when he played that on his guitar was rigged up to her triggers so that he could actually set off explosives by playing certain chords and certain notes.
No way.
And that was wild, because I mean, we could never rehearse that. There was only one shot at it. There was so much explosives in the building. So that was really that was a bit terrifying as a producer when you're standing on the sides thinking, and there was a moment where there's a window that was actually perspex rather than glass. It was the only one in all of this that wasn't glass.
Yeah.
And it caught fire midway through the production. Smoke started pouring in. And luckily we had teams with fire extinguishers everywhere who just sort of casually wandered in and blew that bit out. So, I mean, moments like that were just extraordinary.
No, awesome. Live art, amazing. And your audiences
Absolutely.
must have been absolutely spellbound.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I look back at some of those moments, and they were special for us. But always we're making these events with an audience in mind, and those moments where you see an audience looking in shock and fascination and awe that something like that can be created for them. It's amazing.
And then taking that theatre down right to its last brick, you made everybody part of it.
Yeah, and it was really special. Artists and then audiences being able to be a part of that. I think it was really important way of marking the end of that building.
Yeah.
Very special.
Closure as well. And then did it pause or did you go straight into the new theatre? In Brixton, isn't it? The new
They're
one?
still building it. It is, it's been delayed and now further delayed by coronavirus. So it's due to open in April 21, and I keep my fingers crossed. We hope that they manage to open on time.
Now, you've mentioned you've done pantomimes, but you have done an awful lot of Christmas productions, because that's very near to and dear to the heart of the Bury Theatre.
Yeah, I mean, I've done lots of Christmas shows over the years, and they are beautiful things. And Christmas is a really special time for theatre, I think. There's lots of audiences who only come to the theatre at Christmas, and they come with all of their family, and it's often a real tradition, and they've been going to that same theatre for years and years, and that in itself is beautiful and a real gift. So I've been lucky enough to make those shows all over the country, and as you say, most of those have been more of a sort of Christmas play than a pantomime. But I made Beauty and the Beast at Derby Arena, which is it's actually a velodrome that they turn into an enormous theatre every Christmas with 1,500 seats. So we did Beauty and the Beast there 2 years ago, which was fantastic.
You're listening to Susanna Hornby talking to Owen Calvert-Lyons, Artistic Director at the Theatre Royal, Bury St Edmunds.
Now, you mentioned we're closed at the moment at the Theatre Royal, the Bury Theatre Royal. You're busy, though. You have also got this incredible immersive experience going on that people can still get involved in.
Yes, we do. The theatre was already closed when I arrived, so I had a little bit of time to think and plan before I arrived of how we would make theatre that didn't involve using our stage and our auditorium. And I've actually created a number over the years, a number of these audio-guided walking stories, and they're really beautiful things. They are. We work with local writers and local people who tell the story or a story connected to where they live.
Yeah.
And when they tell it, they also take somebody on a physical journey around that space. So it can be absolutely anything. And we've commissioned 8 of these, and they are located in Bury St Edmunds, but also in Hessett, in Newmarket, in Thurston, and in Lavenham. And you turn up to the starting point. You download the audio guide online for free, pop on your headphones, and then a voice takes you on a journey for somewhere between 10 and 16 minutes. And it gives you all the instructions and directions. It might invite you to look at something or to touch something or to think about something. And all the time you're being told a really beautiful story with a fantastic sound design and original music from David Lewington.
It's really special. I've listened to a few of them myself, and My goodness me, I'm transported into a whole different... I'm like living out the theatre of it myself when I'm listening to it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they're great. I mean, they started, the original version was in 2012 when I was working with the theatre company Punch Drunk, and we made a Dickensian soup kitchen in an empty shop in East London. People would arrive at a 21st century door in a very busy street. We wanted them to arrive in a very particular frame of mind. So we decided to create a half-hour walking journey through East London with them being spoken to by a character. And when we created it, the experience did really well. Audiences loved it, sold out. The British Council came along, they loved it, and they said, we want to take this around the world. Is this possible? And we said, well, we've spent 3 weeks making this soup kitchen. We've also worked with the community for 6 months to get them to the point for them to be able to perform it. So there's no way we could affordably do that around the world. But what we could do is just take the audio guided walk and make that around the world. And the British Council loved that idea. And then we went and made these walking stories in Karachi, in Cape Town, in Melbourne, in Malta, in Singapore. So we had this extraordinary few months where every few months we would fly out and we'd spend 10 days in a different country working with local people to write these stories about where they live. So the Bury version and the Suffolk version has been absolutely brilliant part of that. And it's now I think that's the 6th version of these that I've created in different parts of the world.
Like I just said earlier, they're extraordinary stories, and they're read by well-known actors too.
They are, yes. I mean, they've been different in every version, and this is the first time that we've done it in that way. And we've been lucky enough to work with some absolutely brilliant actors. I mean, it's partly the joy of radio that takes so much less time, so it's much easier to get some of those great actors' availability. It might also be, particularly in this time of coronavirus where there's much less work going around, but we've managed to get 8 really brilliant actors to voice these.
I highly, highly recommend them. Where do we find these stories?
So they're on the Theatre Royal website. So if you go to theatreroyal.org and look in the What's On section, then you'll see in the drop-down menu a section called Walking Stories. All 8 of them are on there, and you just download them directly to your mobile phone or other device directly from the website.
And they're very quick to download, and download them before you leave even, and then you can just, you're ready to go, aren't you, when you're at the start spot?
Absolutely, yeah. Best to get it all on your phone before you set off. But yeah, they're very straightforward. And you can also download a map. You don't need it because you get all the directions through the audio guide. But if you want reassurance that you're definitely going the right way, then you can download the one-page map to take with you too.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Now, let's talk about the community, because as you said earlier, the theatre actively plays such an important role in the community and the wider community.
It does, yes. I mean, that's a really important part of our work, and it's also a big part of what drew me to this job, because that's something I'm really passionate about. So we do an extraordinary amount of work in our community, and whether that is through things like our youth theatre, we have a huge youth theatre that takes place in different age groups and in different parts of the town. Then we also work with Women's Refuge. We work with people with experience of homelessness. We're just setting up a new youth theatre for disabled young people. So we work with a huge number of partner organisations, and we have quite a wide reach about supporting those people in our community most in need. And that hasn't changed even under coronavirus. So while that has affected large parts of our work, we still continue to deliver quite a lot of that work online. So there are weekly workshops with over 55s through our ActuAge programme. There's a community company that continues. So those sort of groups are continuing to create art and culture online.
It's super. Apart from the walking stories, I just want to move on to what we can expect from the theatre. I think you're opening in springtime, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So we haven't got an exact date yet, but that's what we're working towards, is to be able to reopen in the spring, probably with a socially distanced model, and run throughout there till next Christmas, where we hope things might be back to normal by Christmas 21.
Yeah, we certainly do hope that is the case. You're planning ahead massively. You have to in a theatre, I assume. So you are already looking at taking bookings of different productions and what have you for the summer months.
We are, yeah. I mean, theatre always has this strange duality of working both very immediately and planning far ahead. So, on the one hand, we're fairly shortly going to be going back on sale for Cinderella, which was the show which would have happened this Christmas, which will then go back on sale for Christmas 2021. We're already in discussions with companies about things that will happen in spring 2022.
Wow.
But saying that, we're also feeling like we want to make something in the immediate terms. We're really conscious that we are one of the major providers of art and culture in this community, and we've been closed since March. So we're also working behind the scenes to say, well, is there something we can create that's more pop-up, that can happen much more quickly without the normal lead-in time? Is there something that might even happen as soon as this Christmas?
Yeah, really lucky to have you then, Owen, in that case, because you are the man who does these sort of amazing things. So I guess we're just going to have to keep checking out the website and see what's happening at the Theatre Royal.
Absolutely. We will be shouting anything that we do from the rooftops. So, we'll be making sure that everybody knows about what our plans are. And, we'll continue to cook up extraordinary experiences.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, how do we get involved with the theatre? What can we do?
So, you can get involved as a participant. So, again, all of this is on our website. So, if you look up through our participation pages, you'll see all of our participation groups. Some of them, as I said, are still going on now, and others will relaunch in the spring. So it's definitely worth registering your interest in those. You can get involved with us as an audience member with any production, and always, I think that's the best way that you can support any local theatre, is always by buying tickets. And then we have an extraordinary level of support from our patrons and donors, and so people can also sign up to join our patron or donor scheme. And that is of enormous help, and those people really genuinely make such a huge difference to our ability to make art and to continue our extraordinary work. So all of the details are online, and any of those different ways of engaging with us is hugely valuable to Theatre Royal.
Well, we cannot wait to see what you do. We're really excited to have you in Bury. I think along with everything that's been known for with its community and traditional theatre, I think you are definitely going to do some very exciting things.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, and I can't wait to make some more exciting art with this community.
Well, superb. Thank you so much for your time, Owen. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Suffolk Pod Show. Find us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or you can visit our website, podtalk.co.uk. And here's our disclaimer.
The Suffolk Pod Show will not be held responsible for any omissions or errors in its podcast.
The Suffolk Pod Show is produced purely for entertainment purposes. Views and opinions are that of our own or that of our guests.